Hey everyone, Justin Lee Howard here with another episode of Those Were the Days Extended. Today I am taking you back to December 2nd, 1998, where we had this really beautiful sort of touching moment between Hope and Greta, as in Greta Von Amberg. This is where Hope decided to play a song on a piano that Gina used to play Greta when she was young, and the two were sort of stunned by it and sort of bonded over it a little bit. So that sort of sent me down the rabbit hole of just remembrance of Greta Von Amberg as a character. And today we're just going to go through some of the highlights of her time in Salem, starting with her origin, which was back in 1990, I believe, actually 1998 to maybe end of 1997, where Greta, played by lovely Julianne Morris, appeared on the screen as Swamp Girl. When Beau, this takes back to when Beau and Billy were at Maison Blanche searching for answers regarding Hope. They stumbled upon Greta. She was sort of covered up in mud, and again, that's where the nickname Swamp Girl came from. And the mud, especially on her face, was concealing these sort of burn scars. And at the time, Beau was very drawn to her, and in fact, actually wondered if she was Hope. And it was this big question of, is this woman Hope? Because at the time, Hope herself, again, we know, was in Salem as the character of Gina. So there was this lot of mystery about, is Gina Hope? And if she's not Hope, then where's the real Hope? And then Beau finds this woman who sort of looks like she could fit Hope's stature, and her face is covered in this mud, and she's Swamp Girl, and then she has these burn scars. Anyway, they sort of make a connection, and they figure out that Greta had actually escaped from Maison Blanche, where she was being held captive. Now, at the time, we find out that Stefano had actually switched her with Hope before the explosion that actually killed, quote unquote, killed Hope 5 years earlier. So that's where we get the scars from, that Stefano actually switched her with Hope. We know he took Hope, implanted her with Princess Gina's memories, and then she was living her life as Gina at Maison Blanche with Celeste. So again, we find Beau and Hope. He's intrigued by this woman who he may think is his quote-unquote dead wife, the mother of his son. But him and Billy bring her back to Salem to kind of put the pieces together for her story. While in Salem, she forges this kind of close mother-daughter relationship with Gina / Hope. And again, Greta desperately wanted a relationship with her mother, while Hope was also looking for answers for those missing years of her life. And then she was grappling with finding out that she was impersonating Princess Gina for those years, and kind of all of it was a blur. So they were both sort of leaning on each other and taking comfort with one another. While in Salem, Greta did have some significant relationships outside of the one she had with Hope, but specifically with some of the guys there, John, Eric, Jack, and Austin. And I was looking for a particular scene. I could not find it where she had with John, because with John, Greta remembered him from her childhood as Father John, when he was a priest, and he was always just nice to her. And now this harkens back to that time where John was a pawn by Stefano. He was implanted in New Orleans as a priest. Stefano was using him as a pawn again to work with Gina and steal thieves, and to be thieves and steal jewels. This is also the same time period where Kristen and Peter were young, and they were around, and that John, as a young priest, actually befriended the original Rachel, which is Rachel Blake, Kristen's mom. So this is all happening at that sort of time period in John's history. So while in Salem, Greta latched onto John again. She was a past connection to her mom, Princess Gina, while John was able to get some closure on a lot of those missing years of his life. And then John even actually paid for her surgery to correct her scars. And the two often wondered if they were father and daughter. And I remember the show at the time was sort of playing around with the idea. I don't think they knew at the time. They were sort of putting these two in these connections and having them have these talks. And again, they were building this father-daughter relationship. And then it was ultimately revealed that John was, in fact, not her father, but he still sort of played that role in her life while she was in Salem. But romantic-wise, Greta found herself originally, after settling into Salem, she actually found herself with Eric Brady. She began dating him. Of course, he was on a break from his complicated relationship with Nicole. I think at this time, Nicole had just come off of her arranged marriage to Lucas. So that was done and over with. And I think her and Eric were trying to figure things out, but him still not trusting her. And in comes Greta as sort of the good girl to Nicole's bad girl. And then feelings developed. Her and Eric and Greta started dating. And then, despite that, his feelings for Nicole were so strong that he actually cheated on Greta with Nicole. And the guilt was so much that this is what sort of ushered Eric off of canvas. And he left town after being caught with Nicole. So again, when Eric left town 20 something years ago, this is sort of the precipitating situation that caused him to leave, the guilt over cheating on Greta, the constant back and forth with Nicole, realizing they were in a toxic relationship, and he headed out of town. Greta stayed, Nicole stayed, of course, and them two sort of went at it for a couple more times for the couple more years that she was left on the canvas. But another relationship that Greta had, this one is where things got a little weird and sort of lighthearted and a bit silly. I think at the time the writers were sort of searching of what to do once Jensen Ackles as Eric was leaving the show, and they were trying to figure out what to do with Greta, either who to pair her up with now. The Princess Gina storyline was kind of coming to an end, so they decided to put her in the orbit of Jack Devereaux. So again, this is one of sort of the Days' lighthearted and kind of silly plot lines where they had basically Greta and Jack were kind of becoming friends, really getting to know each other. Jack and Jennifer were split up. Jack wanted Jennifer back. She said no, so he decided one way to get her back was to sort of make her jealous. So he recruited Greta in that as his good friend to pretend like they were an item and that they were dating to make basically Jennifer jealous. What happened was that Greta ultimately started falling for Jack. Jack, unfortunately, did not feel the same way about Greta and decided the best way to let her down was to tell her that he was gay, which again, is completely silly and ridiculous and really made no sense at the time. But I think the show was just trying to find something kind of lighthearted and to give sort of these two actors something to do with, in addition to the ongoing sort of Jack and Jennifer saga of it all. So yes, so he tells her he's gay. She backs down, but unfortunately, this fuels her. And it's sort of like it took her feelings of being attracted to him and she switched it around and sort of wanted to become sort of his confidant. And this fueled Greta to try and help Jack not only come out of the closet, but she even went as far as to set him up with men, or to try and set him up with men so that he could sort of come out of the closet and live his true self and, be the man he's supposed to be. So yeah, so this was a fun sort of kind of silly plot. I think, like I said, at the end here, they were trying to figure out what to do with these characters, and especially Greta, and to try and figure out where to sort of shoehorn her in or where she fits on the canvas now that the Princess Gina stuff was wrapping up. So that leads us to sort of the plot line that sort of ushered Greta off campus. And this was Days' craziest plot lines that actually did not go over so well at the time. But what happened was Greta needed to be officially coronated into society and into the monarchy, basically. So they had this coronation storyline. And this at the time was the early 2000s. So everyone, I think, Days especially, was trying to get on this virtual reality craze. And Days decided to take its crack at it, where they had, in order for Greta to be coronated, she needed to go through these sort of tests and challenges in order to come out on the other side and be crowned a true princess. So this actually involved Greta and Austin, whom she had been sort of flirting with, not really dating, but kind of getting there. They were kind of orbiting each other for a while and were sort of becoming friends. But basically, they put them through these sort of silly kind of challenges to go through. One of them was they had to defeat this witch who was played by Alison Sweeney. Then they had to confront sort of holograms of both their dead parents. In Greta's case, it was the ghost of Princess Gina. And in Austin's case, it was Curtis Reed, his abusive sort of rapist father. Again, this is kind of Days at its most craziest, its most silliest. I think what we got out of it was, again, we have Austin Reed here and Julianne Morris, who are both just incredibly good-looking people, and it was them sort of rolling around the jungle half naked. So there was like eye candy involved with the storyline, but this was, I mean, like I said, Days at its most silliest, and I think they were just trying to have a fun time and get in on, at the time, This was the early 2000s on the virtual reality craze. And I think Days was just trying to stay popular with that. But overall, I'd say Greta was a good character. I think where the misstep was not knowing what to do with her once the Princess Gina storyline wrapped. I think the romantic relationships were not the strongest, but I think their biggest asset in terms of her as a character was the relationship with both Hope and John specifically. I do think she has a place on canvas now if they brought her back. Again, unfortunately, we know that John is no longer going to be part of the show, unfortunately, and Christian Alfonso as Hope is kind of in and out, so they don't have those characters to ground her. But I think if she came back, I think there's a way to sort of incorporate her back into the show and make her fun. And again, there's so many people around now who were still around back then and still know her and interacted with her, especially Sean Douglas. We know he's back on the canvas. Jack and Jennifer are kind of in and out. But yeah, I think there's a place for if they do bring her back, which I would be in favor of. But yeah, there was a nice little deep dive into the character and origin of Greta Von Amberg. So thanks, everyone. That was this week's edition of Those Were Days Extended, and I will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.